Okay, as space of the camera ran out, so we are just going to back up a tiny bit, and that is that Rav Ashi tells us that we don't say Hoyel v'gali gale, that even though that for Shinei Bailam we only have a pasuk by the Pesach for Shchita, we don't say that since by Shinei Kodesh it's all for Avodas, so then by Shinei Bailam it's also for Avodas. That we don't say. Rav Ashi Amar, Hoyel v'gale gale lo yamrinan. El Avodas minalan. How do we know that all four Avodas are la'akev, disqualify, where by the Pesach you have in mind the wrong owner? Because the pasuk says, comparing all the karbanos. Now that alone would not tell us the Pesach, because that pasuk doesn't mention the Pesach. But Betanya, but it says at the end of that sequence, beyond Savoy says Bnei Yisrael lahakriv es karbaneim, the day that Hashem commanded the Bnei Yisrael to bring their karbanos. Those include three other otherwise unmentioned karbanos, Zebacharo, Meiser, or Pesach. Oh, so now it compares the Pesach to the Shlomim. Hikisha akasav l'Shlomim. Now, Ma Shlomim, by the Shlomim, bein Shinei Kodesh, bein Shinei Bailam, ba'inon l'mitzvah. Just like by the Shlomim, you need to have it lechatchila for the right type of carbon and the right owner. Afkol bein Shinei Kodesh, bein Shinei Bailam l'mitzvah. Now, but by the Pesach, it's ma'akev, it disqualifies. It says the Gemara, ukeshlomim, ma shlomim, just like by the shlomim, bein zvicha, bein shar avodas, between the shchita and the other avodas, loy chalakta ben lemitzvah, we didn't make a chiluk, and all four avodas adam have to be done l'chatchila for the sake of the mitzvah. Af Pesach, where the shchita disqualifies if it's not done for the Shem Bailim, loitach by bein zvicha l'shar avodas, even la'akev, because just like by the Shlomim, we make no distinction between the blood rituals, so we don't make a distinction by the Pesach, and all four blood rituals, not just the Shechita, disqualify if it's not done l'shem b'ayim. So then the Gemara says, then the who that we try to use initially, what do we do with who? Elahu lamali, kedetanya, nema b'Pesach, who b'Shechita la'akev. It says, who by the shechita to tell us that if you have in mind for the wrong thing, it disqualifies. Aval Osham, even though it says who by the Aktoris Emurim. Aval Osham lo'inema bahu el lachar Aktoris Emurim, by the smoking up of the sacrificial limbs, and since that's not ma'akev, the sacrificial limbs doesn't disqualify the carbon. The only thing that disqualifies the carbon is the zrika. Now that was the Pesach. Now, as we start into our second blot of the evening, as you know, we're doing two blot because we are getting ready for Rosh Hashanah, so that on Rosh Hashanah we shouldn't have to do three blot. And Mark says wanting to do all five tonight, but okay, Mark is playing hide and go seek anyway, so you know now there he is. Look at that, Mark Frankel in the flesh, unbelievable. Now,
having some computer issues, Rabbi, sorry.
It's okay. Computer issues are, as long as we don't have Mark issues, computer issues we could deal with. And by the way, we could use to see some other people, Yisrael Fisher. I'm not just picking on Mark, Stephen Holtzman, all these wonderful, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg, all these wonderful people. Yeah, Yitzi Muller, look at that. These are people that are coming out of the woodwork. They're actually really people. Unbelievable. Okay, so says the Gemara, now we're going to turn our attention to the Chattas. That how do we know that by the sin offering, if you have it in mind for the sake of a different carbon or a sake of a different owner, it's disqualified entirely. So says the Gemara, and let's remember as we learn our second daf, let us energize ourselves to have in mind, to learn, to be mekayim the mitzvah of Idabar Tabam, and to tell Hashem, please, I want to do this every night next year, so give me, there's a lot of things that could cause us not to learn. A person doesn't feel well, a person is having some marital distress, a person is in a sandwich generation and he has something with a child or something with a parent. There's a lot of things that could take us away from our learning. If you remember, I told you a really great Chassam Sofer. It's really, the Chassam Sofer says that when Mordechai saved Klal Yisrael at the time of Haman and Esther, at the time of Haman and Achashverosh, he was demoted in his stature in the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah. He was counted originally as 4 in greatness. He was demoted to 5. Now that doesn't sound like a reason to demote a person because he saved Klal Yisrael. So the Chassam Sofer says an astounding pshat. He said that if Mordechai's learning would have been more precious, then Hashem would have saved Klal Yisrael through someone else, through Zerubbabel. And he would have kept on learning. Because his learning was, so to speak, a little bit dispensable, so he was the one chosen to be taken away from learning. So we say to Hashem, I don't want my learning to be dispensable. Don't take me away from my learning. I wanna be able to learn every night of the year, with full menuchas hanefesh. So says the Gemara, 2 lines from the bottom of Daf Zayin Amid Beis. I want you to know that as soon as Barry came in, the camera stopped. Now you could draw your own, deductions, and I don't want to say anything. You have to be a maven to understand why that would happen, but it did happen. But anyway, chatas minola. How do we know that if you offer the chatas for the wrong carbon or for the wrong person, it's disqualified entirely? That the shchita has to be for the sake of the chatas. Ashkechan shchita, we only know the shchita. Kabbalah minola. How do you know the catching of the blood? Dichsiv, because it says another pasuk, v'lokach hakayin medam hachatas. The kayin should take from the blood of the chatas. Should take Kabbalah l'shem chatas. Okay, so now we know the shchita and the Kabbalah, and we'll assume that since the Torah, when it says Kabbalah, it says it b'loshen v'krivu, b'loshen ha'ilacha. So whatever we say by the Kabbalah applies to the ha'ilacha too. But how do we know the zrika? V'ashkechan shita v'Kabbalah zrika minalan. How do we know that the zrika has to be l'shem chatas? The amakra v'chipur alav ha'koyin mechatasai. The koyin atones. Remember, we said that the atonement is the zrika. Shetei kapara l'shem chatas. And we said ein damu anefesh. The kapara is the zrika. So we learned that the zrika also has to be for the sake of chatas. Now that is shinui kodesh. That's if you have in mind for a different carbon. Ashkechan shinui kodesh. Shinui ba'ila minalan. How do we know if you have in mind for a different owner? Amakra, because the pasuk says olav v'lo al chaveirei, for him and not for somebody else. Okay, so again, this is only telling us that if you have it in mind, it's not good in the first instance. Ashkechan lemitzvah la'akev minalan. How do you know that it disqualifies? Says the Gemara, Kedamar Huna Breder of Yeshua, it could have said chatas and it says chatasai. Hachanami, it could have said chatas and it says chatasai, that from the extra chatasai, it's coming to tell you that it's no good unless it's for its owner. So the Gemara says, okay, so that's a repeat by L'Shem Bailam, because first it says olav, and then it says chatasai. So Shana Kosu La'akiv. So, but by Shinui Kodesh, we only have a source for a mitzvah. Ashkechan mitzvah b'Shinui Kodesh. Ozrika, now the repeat, where it says olav and chatasai, by Shinui Bailam is only by Zrika. Uzrika b'Shinui Bailam bein l'mitzvah bein la'akiv. So we have, by the sprinkling of a different person, that tells us it has to be l'chatchila, and it repeats it with chatasai, that it has to be, it even disqualifies. La'akev b'chol avodas b'Shinui Kodesh, to disqualify by all the avodas in a case of Shinui Kodesh, in a case of a different type of carbon, and b'shar avodas b'Shinui Bailam, by other avodas besides Rika, bein l'mitzvah, bein la'akev minalan. How do we know? So says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yaina, Asya mechatas nazir. We'll learn it out from the sin offering of a nazir. Dichsiv v'hikr v'akayin l'fnei Hashem, v'asa es chatosai v'es oilasai. So it says, v'asa es chatosai, shiu kol asiyosav. Now here, it says, asa. Asa means all of its rituals. Shiu kol asiyosav l'shem chatas. That all of its avodas should be for the sake of chatas. So the Gemara says, okay, ashkechan shinui kodesh. That tells me that if you have in mind a different carbon, it's no good. Shinui bailam minalan. How do we know if we have in mind a different owner? So he says, that's it doesn't just say chatas, it says chatasoi. Amar Avuna b'Rei Rabbi Yeshua, chatas chatasoi. It says his chatas, so it has to be for him and not for someone else. Says the Gemara, but then we should have to say the same drasha by Oila Sai. And we know that an Oila is not disqualified if you have it in mind for a different reason, for a different owner. But here it says, well, it says Chatasai v'Oilasai. So if you're learning to disqualify from Chatasai, then you should have to learn to disqualify by Oila too. But an Oila is not disqualified if you have in mind for a different person. It just doesn't fulfill the owner's requirement. Elamiata Oila Oilasai my darshas bay. Says the Gemara, well, Ulravina mincha minchasai nesech niskai my darshas boo. What do you do from the fact that it says minchasai and niskai? So the Gemara says that comes to tell me a different chiddush. That comes to tell me that if Berish brings a carbon, he could bring his mincha and his libation even the next day, even if it's not together. He could bring his mincha and his libation in the night. He could even bring it the next day. So that it means that it's still minchasai, even if he doesn't bring it together. But what are you going to do with oilasai? Besu, and there's another problem. How could you learn? You want to say that you learn out chatas from chatas nazir and chatas nazir from regular chatas. You can't learn out one from the other. Visu, and furthermore, mi gamrei me adadi. Can we learn out one from the other? Chatas chaylev me chatas nazir loy gamrei. You can't learn out the garden variety chatas if you ate chaylev from the chatas nazir, because the chatas nazir is accompanied by two other karbanas. Sheken yeshim adam macherim, because it has other laws, because it's accompanied by other karbanas. And chatas nazir me chatas chaylev loy gamrei. You can't learn out the chatas nazir from chatas chaylev Because Chatas Chelev is brought for an Issa Karis. Like sleeping with a sister, like eating Chelev, eating Dam. The Chatas Nazir is not an Issa Karis, Sheken Karis. So the Gemara says we have more sources in our arsenal. El Amar Rava, we keep on going over here, Rabbi Yisai. You know, you think about it, the world is busy piling information after information about the assassination of Kirk, and what's his wife doing, and is she forgiving him, and what does Trump have to say, and what does the Democrats have to say. We keep on building one on top of another, on top of another. It's a total waste of time. It's a total waste of time. You know, I give a shmek. Just because I'm a Rav, I have to know certain things. But it's a total waste of time. Instead, we're using our mind and we're building one after another. Well, it's not enough Chatas Chelev. We have to look at Chatas Nazir, but we can't learn out Chatas Chelev from Chatas Nazir. So how do we know? Where do we know? We only had a source for Zrika by Shinui Bailim to disqualify. How do we know the other Avodas? So where are we going to learn it from? This is, and also we have to know, unfortunately, people that are around amongst people see people suffering from dementia. It's a terrible thing. We have to thank Hashem when we say the bracha in the morning. The Chazal tell us sechvi means the mind, not just the rooster. That we know the difference between the day and the night. And we thank Hashem in the bracha of Atachaynein. But it says that when a person sharpens their head with learning, you have to stretch your mind. You have to keep your mind working. It's a very big skula that a person should have a healthy mind. Al tashlichenu le'izikna. So Ela Amar Rava, we're going to learn it out from a different chatas. Asyam echatas mitzayra, from the chatas of the leper. Dichsiv va'asa hakayin es hachatas. The kayin makes the chatas. Shiyu kol asiyos of l'shem chatas. Oh, says the Gemara. Okay, so we have now a second place that it tells us not just a mitzvah, it's ma'akev, but that's, and all the asiyas, because it says v'asa, but that's shinu kodesh, v'ashkechan shinu kodesh, shinu bailam minalei. How do we know if we have in mind for different bailam? On Makra, it says v'chiper alametar, it atones for the one that's being purified. Alamatar hazeh, only on this one that's being purified, but not alamatar chaverai. Says the Gemara, yeah, but we can't learn out regular chatas and a chatas mitzayra. We can't compare the two. Va'akate mi yolfei mehadadi, chatas chelev mechatas mitzayra lo yolfa. Why? Because the chatas mitzayra is accompanied with other karbanas. There's an oshim mitzayra. Shekain yeshi madama acherim. There are other bloods, and chatas mitzayra mechatas chelev legamra. You can't learn out the chatas mitzayra from the chatas chelev because the chatas chelev is an isakaris. Shekain karis. So now the Gemara says, okay, but now we're going to put all our cards together. We now have a regular chatas. We have the chatas chelev, a chatas nazir. And we have the chatas mitzayra. So meichada lo yasya. We can't learn it out from one, but teisei chada mitarte, we can learn one out from two. So the Gemara says, well, which one did have to write? That you should say it's extra to tell us that it's ma'akev. Bahai loy lichtay. Which one shouldn't it write? Loy lichtay brachmana b'chatas chelev v'teisei mehanach, and we would learn it out from chatas nazir and chatas mitzaira. No, because chatas nazir and chatas mitzaira have other bloods. Mahalahanach sheken yesh imam dam ma'acherim. So loy lichtay brachmana b'chatas nazir v'teisei mehanach, and we'd learn it out from chatas mitzaira and chatas chelev. Malahanach shekain ein lahen she'ela. Those cannot be removed by being mater and neder. But a chatas nazir, you could remove it by being mater your naziris. You see, nazir is a neder. Lindor neder nazir lahazal Hashem. This is in honor of the fact that we're all going to do our Torah's Nedarim tomorrow morning. Right? So we can't learn out chatas nazir from the other two because those cannot be removed. They don't have the leniency that they could be removed with a sheila to a chacham. Loy lichter rachmana b'chatas mitzaira v'teisei mehanach. So let's learn it out from chatas chelev and chatas nazir. No, because chatas chelev and chatas nazir, there's no special carbon for a poor person. Ma'alahanach shekain ein bon bedalas. But by the mitzaira, you could have a special carbon where if he's poor, he could bring bird offerings. So now we pull out our magical pasuk. Elam akra zeis atayra la'ayla l'mincha l'chatas l'shlamim la'ashim l'shlamim hikishu akasav l'shlamim ma shlamim bein shinoi kodesh bein shina bailim ba'inon l'shman l'mitzvah by shlamim. We both by shina kodesh and shina bailim. It needs to be l'shma l'mitzvah. Af chatas bein shinoi kodesh bein shina bailim ba'inon l'shma l'mitzvah. So therefore we don't need a pasuk for mitzvah because hilkach mitzvah mishlamim. Therefore, when it then says zois Torah's chatas, and it says the other psukim, that comes to tell us v'hana cry. It not needed just to tell us l'chatchila. Those psukim come la'akev to show that it's disqualified. Says the Gemara. Okay, but we're still not out of the woods because v'ashkechan, says the Gemara. Wow, it's really nice. We learned already a blot and a half. We have on the last day of the year 26 Zoomers and 5 people here in the shul. It's really good, Rabbi say. It's really wonderful. So now the Gemara says, "V'ashkechan chatas chelev dichsib ba lechatas." So since it has to be for the sake of a chatas, so we said that since we learned from the hekesh to shlamim a mitzvah, and lechatas tells us that it's ma'akev. Chatas. What about other types of chatas? Chatas d'avodas kechavim, of avodah zarah, d'shmias hakol, where you're making an oath about testimony. Ubitus v'sayim, the false utterance. Utumas mikdash u'kedashim, and the variable scale chatas of one who enters into the mikdash tamei or eats kachim b'tama. The loik sibhu, where it doesn't say lechatas minalan, says the Gemara. Well, chatas d'avodas kechavim, which is an isur karis, that we learn from a simple comparison to the chatas of chelev, which is an isur karis. Asim chatas chelev sheken karis kamaisa. V'hanach kulahu, and the other ones, in other words, tumas mikdash u'kedoshav, and those asya b'ma'atzad. We can learn them out from combining chatas chelev, chatas mitzaira, chatas nazir, and chatas avodah zarah. We could learn it out from all of those together and compare to the Tumas Mikdash Kedosha and the Bitus Vesayim, and the court imposed oath. Now, I want to point out that in Yirtzeh Hashem on Motzi Yom Tov, because one of the things that Hashem likes to do is He listens to our plans, so that we should be able to plan about what we're going to do right after Yom Adin. So Hashem says, I got to give these guys a break. What do they want to do even right after Yom Adin? So right after Yom Adin, the shir on Wednesday night, is going to be at 9:15. Shir on Wednesday night is 9:15. There will probably not be a Chumash shir, Motzi Yom Tov, but the shir on Wednesday night will be 9:15, and the shir on Thursday night, because I know Barry keeps a scorecard, is at 8 o'clock. Don't ask me Motzei Shabbos, because I'll punch you in the nose. Actually, Barry doesn't look so bad with a punched nose. Now,
Rabbi, you said Wednesday night is 9:15, correct?
9:15, right.
Okay.
2 blocks, right?
9:15, 2 block, that is correct. Because we're learning 2 block now, it wouldn't be 3 block. So I'm doing you a very big favor. Now, Tan Rabbana, Pesach Bizmanai, the Korban Pesach, when it's offered in its time on the 14th of Nisan, Lishmai Kosher, Shalai Lishmai, like we learned in the Mishnah, if you did it Shalai Lishmai, it's possible. Ubeshar Yemai Sashana, the rest of the year, Lishmai possible. If you offer it, let's say on Purim, as a Pesach, it's possible. Shalai Lishmai, but if you offer it Shalai Lishmai, it's kosher as a shlamim. So now the Gemara says, Minani Mili, how do I know this? Amravua Shmuel, the father of Shmuel, says, Amakra, V'im minat soin karbana, if from the flock is your carbon, L'zevach shlomim la'Hashem. Dover abba minat soin, that which comes from the flock, namely a Pesach, Yehei L'zevach shlomim. So the Gemara says, I might think that if I shech the Pesach l'shem shlomim, it's kosher. But if I shecht it as an oila, or if I shecht it as a chatis, it wouldn't be kosher. Ema shlomim in, midei achrin aloi, something else not. Rabbi Lo, Rabbi Yochanan, it doesn't say v'im min atzayin karbanai l'shlomim. It says im atzayin karbanan l'zevach shlomim, to tell you that even if you secht it for a different zevach, it's going to be shlamim. Amar Rabbi Yochanan l'zevach l'rabas kol zevach. That if you take a Pesach on Purim, even if you shecht it as an oila, it's kosher as a shlamim. Says the Gemara, well, maybe not. Ema kol d'shachit lahavi k'maisa. Why don't we say that whatever you shecht, it should be like it? So if you shecht it as a shlamim, it's a shlamim. If you shecht the Pesach on Purim as an oila, it should be an oila. Says the Gemara, if it would have said, if it would have said that it should be l'shlamim v'zevach, then you would be right. That it could be either a shlamim or another carbon. But it doesn't say that. It says, hashda d'chsiv l'zevach shlamim, that any zevach that you have in mind, it should be a shlamim. L'kol d'shachat le shlamim lahavi. Says the Gemara, but wait a second. Ema lezevach, says the Gemara, Ema lezevach klal. Let's say that when he says lezevach, that's a klal, shlomim prat. Now, if you have a klal of prat, that's very limiting. Klal of prat in, ein b'chlal elamashe b'prat, shlomim in, if it's offered as a shlomim good, mideach min aloi, but if it's offered as anything else, it's no good. Says the Gemara, no, you have over here a klal of prat, a klal. Because it says, lezevach shlomim la'Hashem, la'Hashem hoder v'kolal. Says the Gemara, but that's not a normal klal of prat. Because Zevach only includes shchita. Zevach means shchita. LaHashem includes not only shchita, but it includes a bird offering, malika, and it includes even a meal offering. Maskala Reb Yaakov in our pocket, Hailoi domi klala basra l'klala kama. The latter klal is not like the former klal. Klala kama mar b'zvachim v'sulai, because Zevach means only shchita. It doesn't even include poultry, which is malika. Klala basra la'Hashem is called al Hashem, which includes even birds and even meal offerings. Says, okay, but there is a Tanit by Rabbi Shmuel that says that the latter klal doesn't have to be exactly like the first klal. Hi Tanit by Rabbi Shmuel b'chlal prate darish beik gavna. He holds such a klal, a prata klal. But now what are you going to do with the klal, a prata klal? Klal, a prata klal, yatadon elakain prat. It's only similar to the specification. Ma prat mafurish shu davar shaloi lishmai. It's something not for its sake, v'kosher. Af kol shu shaloi lishmai v'kosher. And therefore, if you shech the Pesach for anything shaloi lishma, it's kosher. Says the Gemara, well, wait a second. Ima prat mafurish davar haba b'neder u'nedava. The prat, because it says zevach shlomim la'Hashem, a shlomim is only something that could be brought voluntarily. So then it would only be if you shech the Pesach for a shlomim. If you shech the Pesach, let's say for an osham, which is not voluntary, then it wouldn't be good. Ima prat mafurish davar haba b'neder u'nedava, af kol haba b'neder u'nedava. That would be oilu shlomim in, but chatas v'ashim loy. But the mice is, the din is, if you shech the Pesach l'shem chatas or l'shem ashim, it's still kosher as a shlomim. Ella says the Gemara, you're right. The word lezevach is ribuyahu. It's considered to be an inclusion, and that inclusion comes to include anything that is you have in mind is kosher as a shlomim. Now the Gemara is going to pounce on this more and fine-tune this more, but I'm sorry to have to make you wait till after Yom Tov, but you could ponder this over Yom Tov. And I want to point out to you that we just started Seder Kachim, and we're already up to Daf Tes, which is quite impressive, Rabbi say. And I want to really wish all of you and all my viewers and listeners on Kol on Torah Anytime, on YouTube, my wonderful Zoom family, my subscribers, and the people that listen to me in ways that I don't even know. You know, I meet people on the street. Do you know I heard you on Sheer Enjoyment, and I heard you on this thing and on that thing? I said, well, okay, I'm glad. It's interesting. When I wrote my sefer, Power Benching, so the publisher wanted to know if he should put in all rights reserved, and you have to ask permission from the author if you want to use anything. So I said, no, you don't write that. Why? I want as many people to use it in many forms as possible, so that we should be able to be marbitz Torah. And therefore, I don't have any copyright on my Torah. You want to carry it on Gat Torah, my Torah, his Torah, your Torah, you could carry it on anywhere you want. I want to wish everybody, please, first of all, let's have each other in mind. Even one time when you say, Chasveinu b'sefer achayim, have in mind our share. Have it in mind. Remember that makes your davening much stronger, because kol hamispal b'ad chaveroi v'utzarech lo yisadavar hu nenetchila. Also, don't forget to ask your wife for forgiveness. Ramila said, do you ask your wife for forgiveness? And she says yes, even though she doesn't mean it. You remember him saying that? Yeah, he said even though she doesn't mean it, it's already an entirely different year. So anyway, we want to wish everybody a good year. And in case I embarrassed anybody, I did it only in jest. I didn't mean it anyway. I think the world of everybody here in the shir, even those that are not here, like Marshall. I think the world of him, of course, and Eddie and Barry and Mark and everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful year, and everything great.